Swords. Since the dawn of time, man has created weapons to fight battles. In most media, it's usually a battle between evil and the greater good, with video games being the best way to showcase these weapons. So what if I told you there was one game that was exactly that? A battle between order and chaos, with over 10 million downloads, a near perfect review, but with the graphics of a Nintendo 64, and it's only available on your phone? Well then, let me introduce you to Swordigo. Swordigo is a 2012 2D action-adventure game created by Finnish indie studio Touch. You play as an unnamed hero destined to defeat the Master of Chaos and bring peace to the world. You know, your typical Chosen One story trope. And despite its unique art style and simple gameplay, this game would end up getting over 10 million downloads and a nearly perfect review across the board, which is insane. But before I get into the game and what made it so special, we first need to take a look back at mobile games in the 2010s. Also, two quick disclaimers before I get into this video. First off, I never played this game, as it was mostly just recommended by you guys, so I might miss a few facts or details about this game that actual Swordigo players would know. If so, please feel free to comment it down below. And secondly, I didn't realize that someone already beat me to this by like 3 years. And my channel does not compare to theirs at all, so their video is probably better than mine, which you should go check out. And that being said, I do hope you stick around and watch mine at least. Please. During the 2010s, the mobile market was relatively young, still learning its first steps, figuring out what kind of games would work on a touchscreen, and while it did have ads and microtransactions, it wasn't that bad. Yet. Just give it a few more years. Majority of the games at the time were either endless runners, puzzle games, or Clash of Clans clones. Kid Me in particular was obsessed with Minecraft PE and Samurai Siege. And while some developers tried to innovate and create something new, there were always dozens of copies right after trying to leech off of a popular game's success. Then, somewhere in Finland, two friends decided to start their own gaming studio called Touch. They started with a game called Suiz, and I have no idea what that means, but it was also an adventure platformer game with the unique mechanic of being able to rotate the world with your own phone. This was in 2009, so gimmicks like that were all over the marketplace. But it was a really fun little game, and its simplicity and creativity is a sign for what's to come, as by 2012 Swordigo would be born. And instead of trying to copy another game's success, they simply improved on their previous game and more. The art style takes some time to get used to, but once you play it long enough, it'll actually end up quite memorable. It actually reminds me of Banjo-Kazooie or Conker's Bad Fur Day in terms of graphics. Also, since the game is 2D but the graphics are 3D, the devs made the most of it, as in some levels you can actually see the next area in the distance, which helps players find potential hidden areas or just be prepared for what comes next. The controls are quite simple. You can swing a sword and move with buttons, and there's a double jump. There's also a button for magic, but I'll get more into that later. And since it's part RPG, any enemies you defeat will give you XP, which you can use to level up your character. There's many different places to explore, with different backdrops and enemies. However, that also leads to one potential flaw, which is that the map is confusing as heck. Since it's in 2D, it's hard to tell where to go, especially at the start. The game even offers a compass, which is actually the only paid thing in the entire game. Swordigo is absolutely free, with no ads, and the compass only costs $2. You don't even really need it, so it's more of a donation/support purchase, which the game definitely does deserve. Lastly, there's bosses you'll have to fight to continue the story. And here's the thing, the bosses are fantastic.
Say that again!
Normally most bosses are just, oh, make the enemy bigger with more health. But in Swordigo, there's only 4 main bosses, not counting mini bosses, and how they are done is super creative. Every boss is a gimmick that differentiates them from the last. Like the Overseer, who can teleport, and the Dwarven King, who is... The final boss is also something really special that I'll save for last. And this is just the basics of what Swordigo has to offer. Now, the only thing left to talk about is the story. Swordigo starts with a dream. A silhouetted man is battling against some unseen monster, and right before it ends, you wake up with a bad feeling. So you head out and explore your village called Carnwood. There's only a few houses and the scenery is quite pleasant, however you find out that your master went into the woods and hasn't been back since, prompting you to go after him, but not before getting your first sword. The Carnwood Forest serves as a nice tutorial, with a few easy enemies and requiring some casual platforming to ease new players into the game. After getting to the end, you'll find out that your master has been killed by the Corruptors, beings from the Dark Dimension that is looking to spread chaos throughout the land. In order to defeat them, you'll have to find the Mage Blade, a legendary sword from the past that was forged by gods and given to the previous heroes to fight back against evil. Although with this in mind, why wasn't the game just called Mage Blade? Swordigo is not mentioned once in the game, nor did I find an explanation into why it's called that. But what it does remind me of is the Triforce from Zelda and Samurai Jack's sword, because it has untold amounts of magic and is the only thing that can harm the Corruptors. You'll also receive your first spell of magic, which is a bolt that can be used to attack from range. To find the rest of the pieces, you'll have to find and speak to the king of a nearby city called Florninium, who was recently captured by some bandits. And the fun little detail is, before heading to the city, you can choose to enter the final level really early and face the Corruptor that shot you earlier. However, only the Mage Blade can damage them, and using magic will do practically nothing. You can also choose to explore hidden areas of the map. The game will reward patient players with some cool loot and secrets, however the game also punishes those who take the game too lightly. For example, in a hidden crypt, there's a chest that seems like easy pickings. That is until the game turns into a horror game, with the lights cutting off and the door opening slower than usual and just stopping. If you were underprepared for this part, you most likely wouldn't make it. And it's a cool idea that I absolutely love, and if you do survive, you'll receive your first trinket before reaching the city. Trinkets are basically accessories or charms that you can put on both your weapons, magic, or armor with varied effects. Speaking of which, the name of the game is Swordigo after all, so you'll be spending the time upgrading to better and better swords by getting them in shops. The shop in Florem is also working at your first armor. The dungeon the king is in is full of enemies and also puzzles, and some of them are pretty creative. To save the king, you'll have to defeat the Overseer, a powerful mage who has the hilt of the sword. What I like about this boss, as I said before, is that it'll teleport to a new stage when you're getting the upper hand, forcing you to adapt each time. After defeating the mage and getting the hilt, the king tells you to find the rest of the blade in the deepest parts of the caves in the wastelands. The wastelands have less enemies outside, but harder platforms to jump across, and once you reach the caves there are stronger enemies, some even wielding magic. And the funny but cool detail is how they try to add assassins halfway throughout the game. In the wastelands, if you backtrack for whatever reason, maybe to heal or look for hidden spots, there will be a dark bandit waiting for you, an enemy that is stronger than usual and seems like a threat. But it's also in the area with a very steep cliff, and 100% of the time they'll end up walking off anyway. Once you get to the end of the cave, you'll have to face the Flame King. In this boss fight, he's always hovering above, and you have to use the Dragon's Grip spell to pull him back in and attack. He holds one piece of the blade. For the other half, the village elder tells you to travel to the snow plains and defeat the Dwarven King. Now the good news is, this place has less enemies. The bad news is, the map is the new enemy. The whole place becomes an obstacle course as you make your way to the top, with slippery ice floors, falling icicles, and ice boulders. And I like this nice change of pace, because if you took your time with the game, you'll be over leveled and enemies wouldn't do much. So this is a nice way of adding an additional layer of difficulty. However, before you can get to the Dwarven King, the village elder appears again and tells you to travel to the Dark Dimension to get the Dimensional Ice spell, as many corruptors use the Dark Dimension to hide tricks from the hero that he'll need to see. What I like about this part in particular is that there's a corruptor in the Dark Dimension with you. If you try to get into the final area before, you'll know that you can't damage it. But if you do choose to attack it, it'll be revealed to be a lesser corruptor which you can defeat. I'm not sure if this was intentional, but if it was, that's pretty funny, because I can imagine the frustration that a bunch of people had trying to beat this stage without realizing it was attackable. Once complete, you'll learn the Dimensional Ice spell, which lets you see hidden platforms or enemies as long as it's active, which lets players experiment by going back to previous levels to see any secret areas they missed. So after using your new spell to unlock the door, you face the Dwarven King, who might be the second hardest boss if you're not careful. He's fast, and he's also title card. To beat him, you'll have to use your new spell to spot the two towers powering his shield, almost like the end towers in the end. And if you manage to beat him, you'll get the final piece of the sword and be able to assemble the Mage Blade. Now fully prepared, you can head back to the beginning area with that corruptor and defeat it for real, while also using the ice spell to see the hidden platform. So like I said earlier, if you somehow beat the corruptor early, you still can't pass without the spell, so it's a cool detail by the devs. There, you'll have to face everything the Dark Forces have to offer, corruptors, and even statue turrets that launch fireballs at you. At the end, you'll have to face off against the Master of Chaos, using everything you learned so far against you. Once you do defeat him, he'll turn into its final form, and it's you. Light cannot exist without darkness, so order cannot exist without chaos, hence why it took the form of the hero. What makes this even better is it's not one of those things where it's you, but they have a completely different moveset. So it's more like a boss fight with your character's design. But this final boss has the exact same moveset and abilities as you. Whatever trinkets you had and whatever level you were are completely the same. And this makes it one of the hardest boss fights in the game, unless you run to the corner and abuse the AI. But you wouldn't be the type to do that, right? Once he's defeated, peace returns to the land, and a little epilogue pops up showing that after the hero defeated Chaos, he became the new king for a while before ultimately retired back into his hometown of Carnwood. Swordigo would go on to get over 10 million downloads and became one of the most highly rated mobile games ever, because 4.8 with that many downloads is amazing, and it goes to show how much devs put a lot of passion into their game. And it didn't even have the best graphics or a super complex story. Heck, literally the entire time nobody has a name except apparently the hero, who's called Hero in the game's file.
How original.
Swordigo would also never get a sequel for two reasons. First is the game pretty much wrapped up the story with a neat little bow, so there was no need for one. And secondly, because the two developers joined up with a bigger studio called Dire Light, and together they made a new game called Grim Valor, which is just like Swordigo, but it's more of a Dark Souls and Dead Cells hybrid. It was pretty good, but it wasn't the best. People loved it, but it didn't really pick up, and its downloads and reviews were even lower than Swordigo. Plus, this was in 2018. Since then, aside from a Switch port, Dire Light hasn't made a new game, so it's safe to assume that maybe the devs have quit entirely, or maybe are silently working on a new project that we don't know about. But at the end of the day, just like my first impression of this game, I thought it was nothing more than just a really fun obscure game from the past, but it was so much more. It completely ignored the trends of the mobile market and chose to do its own thing, and it paid off. As years have passed and the game is still in the heart of the players that loved it, and that's what truly makes Swordigo an unexpected masterpiece. Thanks for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this look back at an underrated yet goated game. I honestly thought I wouldn't find much about this game when you all first recommended it to me, but I couldn't be more wrong. It's unfortunate that it didn't get a sequel or the devs might not be active anymore, but the fact it's still talked about to this day and is still downloaded is a testament to how much love was put into its development. I mean, there's someone looking to make a Swordigo 2, and it looks pretty cool. Next video will most likely be about Samurai vs Zombies, as it was the second most requested. And if any of you have more games that you want me to cover, leave them in the comments below. So until next time, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.